Okay, hi, welcome back for part two of the introduction to this chapter. Okay, I labeled this day two. So today you're going to actually read the pages and you're going to do the second worksheet. Okay, page 101. All right, yes, there is no page 100. It's okay, don't worry about it. It's the back that tells you all the things that are coming and the terms and stuff like that. Okay, so we have 2 pages here that we're going to be covering. Okay, so I'm gonna move you around a little bit. So like right now I'm moving you to go more to this page. Hopefully you don't fall down. All right. Okay, so we left off yesterday talking about the people's rights. Yes, states' rights versus federal rights. Okay, I don't like that. Let's turn it a little bit more. Hi, I can see you now. Can you see me? Okay, fine. All right, so we are going to pick up and look at the period in our history from 1854 through to 1861. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff that happens in this period, which is why I had to break it into 2 days because it was just too much to go through. You guys would have been spending like an hour on history alone, and I didn't want you to do that because we only have 45 minutes. Yes. All right, so we learned yesterday that the South was upset about what they felt the government was overstepping their authority. And so, sorry, I'm going to move you just a little bit more. Okay. And so they were very upset. South Carolina specifically was upset over the tariffs. You will find that South Carolina will actually be the first state to secede when Lincoln becomes president in the election of 1860. All right, so what happens? So remember a while ago, yesterday, I told you that the South was worried there'd be too many too many free states, and then they would lose power, and the North was worried there'd be too many slave states, and they would lose power. So what they did was they came up with the Missouri Compromise, and remember, all the states south of Missouri could be free, all the territory once it became a state, and all the states north of Missouri would be, I'm sorry, I did that backwards, so sorry, misspoke. All of the states south of Missouri would be slave, and all of them north of Missouri would be free. Okay, so that was the Missouri Compromise in a nutshell. It allowed the state of Maine to come in and Missouri to keep power all even and the balance all even. But what happens is at this point in history, people are moving across the nation. Okay, and the southern people are a little ticked off, upset and annoyed about the Missouri Compromise because now they have come to realize that if they move into these new territories, they will not be allowed to bring their slaves. Okay, so they get a little upset and they go to Stephen Douglas and they're like, hey, we're upset. And so Stephen Douglas comes up with this new idea called the KansasNebraska Act. So basically what the act says is we're not going to look at the Missouri Compromise. Just ignore that. Just pretend it never happened. And now we're going to say that every territory, when it becomes a state, gets to decide for itself if it's slave or free. Okay, so that is the KansasNebraska Act. It was, again, not fixing our problem of slavery, but having the South be happy again. Okay? And the North said, oh, yeah, that'd be fine because, we will make sure that they're free states. And now think about all those territories south of Missouri that we can make sure are free instead of slave. And the Souths are like, oh, yeah, we can make sure they're all slave instead of free. And so both sides thought they were going to benefit from it. Unfortunately, the only problem, I guess, was Kansas. Poor Kansas. They were caught in the middle of this mess, which ends up being a huge mess. So Kansas wants to come in as a state. They're like, hey, go to vote. Now, the way that the Kansas-Nebraska Act read, it said residents of the state. But just like they went, Missouri Compromise, they went, residency. Okay? So what they did was people from Missouri, which guess what, is a slave state because it came in under the Missouri Compromise, start flooding across the border into Kansas. Okay? And then people were like, hey, you can't do that. So then people from the north were flooding over into Kansas. Okay? And Kansas themselves, they kind of wanted to be free. Yeah, the people who live there. So what happens is on March 30th, 1855, these people come in, they start beating up people, killing people. They set up a slave-happy government. Those are the ones that came over from Missouri. And they make it illegal for abolitionists to even say stuff or write stuff. So they take the Constitution and chuck it out, kind of like now. And so that is a problem. Okay? So the people of Kansas go, oh, no, hold it. We want to be free, a free state. So they set up a second government. So now the two governments are fighting. In fact, it's called guerrilla warfare. Remember we talked about guerrilla warfare, how you kind of run in, hurt people, destroy things, and leave? Yeah. So it becomes a whole big guerrilla warfare. And this lasts from 1855 to 1859. This is not like just a day or a week. This is 4 years of these two governments battling back and forth, of guerrilla warfare, of people getting killed, of destruction of property. 4 years. Some historians actually call this the baby Civil War, okay, or the pre-Civil War, because it's Kansas and basically it's kind of the model of what happens during the Civil War. Yeah, it's just on a very small scale, only in Kansas. So very, very sad that both pro and anti slavery people poured into Kansas and made it basically like a battle zone. It was terrible. And that lasted for 4 years. It's crazy. So the South was worried about the federal government overstepping their rights, but the North was always also worried about states' rights. So the federal government in 1850 passed something called the Fugitive Slave Act. So before 1850 and the passage of the Fugitive Slave Act, if you were a slave and you ran away and you got above where the slave states are, so you got into the northern free states, ta-da! You were free. And there was nothing anybody could do about it. You were free. Okay? So technically, you were supposed to send them back, but nobody ever sent them back. It's terrible. Okay? So you were free. You were happy. You did a happy dance. Okay? Because you were free. The Fugitive Slave Act took that away. So now the Fugitive Slave Act said, I can chase you anywhere you may go. So it doesn't matter if you get into a northern free state, I can come get you. In fact, if anybody knows that you're an escaped slave and you help them, you don't send them back, then you, as the person who knows they're escaped, can go to jail. Yeah? So people were then risking their safety to help runaway slaves, which the South thought that would fix the problem. So now, if you ran away, you had to run all the way to Canada to be a free person. And so the North was very concerned because they actually had their own laws concerning runaway slaves, which was basically you get here, you're free, ta-da, and you never have to go back, ta-da, and no master can come get you, ta-da, but alas, no. Okay? So that's why they were concerned. So basically, the federal government's law of the Fugitive Slave Act stamped out the state's laws concerning runaway slaves. which the northern states were not so happy about. All right? Okay. All right. The Constitution. Yes. So the Constitution, which is our thing that rules us, the Constitution says that all states are supposed to support any law the federal government makes. Okay? So when they made the Fugitive Slave Act, that was law, that was it, it was all over. Sad but true. All right, so another thing that divides the country is just being ripped apart at this point in history. Just everything is just the economy between the North and the South, the tariffs between the North and the South, slavery between the North and the South. It's all the Fugitive Slave Act versus the protection acts that the northern states had. It's all like pulling apart. So here's another thing that starts pulling apart the country. Political parties. Okay? Please remember way back in 3rd grade, I know this was 2 years ago for you guys, when I taught you about what George Washington said about political parties. He said, don't do them, bad idea. You only focus on your party, you don't focus on what's good for the country. And he was right. You can see that even today. You can see that all through history. And here is one of those times political parties are dividing the country. Okay, it's really about the political party and their support of slavery or free. All right. Another thing that southern states really wanted is they really wanted more slave states, which is why they pushed for the KansasNebraska Act. So now we're gonna move over here. Are you coming with me? Oh, good. So glad to see you're coming with me. And here we are going to look at the political parties, their history, and how they are responsible. Here, let me back you up a little bit. I think is what I want to do. Oh, that's still not getting you the bottom. Hang on. Let me tip you. All right, there. Now you got the bottom too. All right. Let me back you up a little bit more. Sorry, guys. I'm so sorry. All right, how's that? Is that better? Okay, awesome. So the political parties of this time, all right? So they are in turmoil as well. Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has been around since the mid-1800s because the Democrats and the Republicans split because it used to be called the Democratic Republican Party. Yeah. They split. So by the mid-1800s in the Democratic Party, almost all of the people in the South belong to the Democratic Party, and some people in the North belong to the Democratic Party. Now, the Democratic Party supports slavery. They think slavery should stay. A lot of people in the Democratic Party actually owned slaves. Okay? They also believe in the state's choice on whether it should be a slave state or a free state. They pushed for the KansasNebraska Act. Okay? Stephen Douglas, Democrat. Okay? All right. So they also believe that they should be able to take their slaves anywhere. Remember, we talked about that with Dred Scott. Take them anywhere and they still are your slave. Just like your horse is still your horse no matter where you take it. Because they did not see slaves as people. They said they were property, remember. So they wanted to be able to take their slaves anywhere they went, whether it was a free state or a slave state, and they should remain their slave. Okay? Democrats also supported the Fugitive Slave Act because they were upset that their slaves would run away and they'd have to go get them, and they couldn't get them because they had crossed the Ohio River when you were in the North. Ta-da! Okay? All right. So, at this time, we also have the Whigs. So, the Whigs are beginning to lose power. They're beginning to lose support. And so, from the 1830s to the 1850s, not a lot of people are like, hey, let's be a Whig. Okay? And so what begins to happen to the Whigs is they begin to fight within themselves, their own political party. Because some Whigs are like the Democrats and want to keep slavery. Some Whigs are like the Free Soil Party and want to get rid of slavery. So the Whigs actually break apart during this time. The Cotton Whigs, which is what they were called, the ones who wanted slavery. Yes, slavery, good, awesome. They moved to the Democratic Party and joined the Let's Have Slaves group. Okay? And when did they join? They joined after the KansasNebraska Act was passed. A lot of historians believe the KansasNebraska Act is the first, it directly leads to the Civil War. Okay? It directly leads to the split of the parties, which directly leads to the election of Lincoln, which directly leads to the Civil War. So I can see where they're coming from. Okay. All right. The Whigs who said slavery, bad, not good, wrong, they joined the Free Soil Party. Okay. So at this time, there are 3 parties that are anti-slavery. One is Republican, one is Free Soil, and one is the conscience, you know, you have conscience Whigs. Okay. Those are the 3 political parties at this time that are against slavery. So the Conscience Whigs joined the Free Soil Party because they don't want slavery. And when do they do it? Oh, look. They do it after the KansasNebraska Act. Look at that. So a lot of these people who moved from the Whigs to the Free Soil they were previously Democrats, but they did not believe in slavery. And slavery is a huge part of the Democratic Party. So they were Whigs, but they kind of like had same ideas, yeah? And so when the Democrats said, nope, we want slavery, then these people left the Whigs, joined the Free Soil, because they could not join Democrats because they did not believe in slavery. All right? Okay, so most of these people are from the West and the North. Okay? Now, what happens is these 2 groups, Free Soil and Conscious Whigs, so remember the Conscious Whigs joined Free Soil, so they all end up joining the Republican Party by 1854. So they decide to combine forces. Okay, because you can do more when you're working together than when you're 3 divided peoples. So since all of these groups did not want slavery and wanted it to end and not spread, they all joined together. Make sense? All right, so in 1854, all of them joined together as one party, and they all went under the Republican Party. This is the same Republican Party that is today. This is the same Democratic Party that is today, okay? And now those are like the 2 main parties of the United States. Occasionally you'll have somebody like from the Green Party or the Libertarian Party kind of get on the ballot or whatever, but 99%, actually, every election since 1860 has been won by either a Democrat or a Republican. Okay, so basically all the other parties have disappeared. All right, and some people try to run as independent. That means they don't belong to either party. But again, since 1860, that's a long time, yeah, it's always been a Democrat or a Republican who wins the presidential election. All right, okay, so the Republican Party grew very quickly. After its first year of becoming the Republican Party, they were able to elect congressmen. Okay, that is huge. So right now, like, there are very few congressmen. Actually, I don't even know if there's any. I'd have to actually look that up. Who are independent? I can tell you there is one senator who's independent. Well, he runs as an independent, but he's Democrat. Shh, don't tell him. I think he knows, but I don't know. But anyway, so independents don't usually get into office because they're considered a very small party. Libertarian, same thing. Green Party, same thing. Okay, so for a brand new party, the Republicans, to be able in the very first year to get congressmen elected was like a huge feat. In the second year, they already have a presidential candidate. I mean, this is immense. This is enormous. to be able to do that in the second year. The presidential candidate was John C. Fremont. He actually lost the election. He lost it to Buchanan. Let me double check. All of a sudden that doesn't sound right. Yes, James Buchanan. Okay, so Fremont lost to James Buchanan. Okay, James Buchanan was a Democrat. I'm just sitting because it's easier to come down here with you. All right, so James Buchanan was a Democrat and he won the election. But what happened with John C. Fremont is that the Republican Party now had national recognition. Okay, so because they had a presidential candidate, everybody's like, whoa, how come I know about independence, libertarian, and green? It's because they have presidential candidates. They don't ever win the presidency, but they always run them. Okay, so then with gaining national attention, it made it much easier for President Abraham Lincoln to win as the presidential candidate in 1860. So tomorrow we will talk about the election of 1860. 4 men run. Yeah. So Abraham Lincoln runs as a Republican, and then you have Bell running, and you have I always forget his name. It's Buck something. Hang on, sorry. Breckinridge. So it's 2 Johns. John Breckinridge and John Bell. Stephen Douglas. You've heard that name. Hello. KansasNebraska Act. Stephen Douglas. And Abraham Lincoln. Okay. So those are the 4 guys that are going to run in the 1860 election, which we'll talk about tomorrow. All right. So I hope you enjoyed. Please read. Please do your worksheet. Please submit. Okay. Love you guys. See you later. Bye-bye.